Khamzat Chimaev versus Robert Whittaker has been announced as the main event for UFC Saudi Arabia, the first ever UFC event in Saudi Arabia, and this fight is one I have wanted for a long time. We'll start from just kind of what I think. So, early thoughts on this. The first thing I thought was, right, Whittaker didn't look too good against Costa. He nearly got finished in the first round. And Chimaev is young, hungry, up and coming. I can see him taking Rob out. Not early, but I could see him winning this fight. But then I kind of thought about it a little bit more. Khamzat, everyone, I saw a few people saying, "Oh, Khamzat first round sub, he's just going to pick him up and slam him." Yet Khamzat couldn't finish Gilbert Burns, a former lightweight. Couldn't finish him. He couldn't finish Usman on a week's notice, coming off 2 losses in a weight class he never fought in. I don't see a world where Khamzat's going to run across the octagon, pick up Robert Whittaker, who's literally only lost to champions, 2 people, I think, in middleweight, and just pick him up and submit him in the first round. I think Robert Whittaker is going to weather the storm early on, and I think Whittaker is going to piece Khamzat up in the later rounds. But what I just said there, weather the storm, he's going to be in one early on. That Khamzat first round storm, it's kind of like, as long as you get through it. Usman showed it. Gilbert showed it. You know what I mean? He is beatable. And I don't really see Khamzat being in a massive size advantage. I do think he will be bigger than Rob. But I don't think it's going to be a case of like, you're like, fuck, like, this is insane. Like, Khamzat was a welterweight 2 years ago. A year ago, before he couldn't fucking make weight. But that's what I think is going to happen in this fight. I think Whittaker's footwork, I think his movement's going to be a little bit too much for Khamzat. And I see a lot of people giving Whittaker shit for his takedown defense. Dricus du Plessis is a freak of nature. Unfortunately, as much as you hate to admit it, Dricus is the best. I can't even say it. He's one of the best in the world. I thought Whittaker looked awful slow that night. It just looked off. I still think Whittaker could beat Dricus. I'm being honest here. I think Dricus loses to Whittaker in a rematch. I don't think he makes the same mistake twice with Dricus. Whittaker, he's kind of been known as second best the last few years, but you can't forget that this dude was champion for years. Like, he's one of the greatest middleweights of all time. He's never been finished by submission in middleweight. He's never been finished in the first round, which is exactly what Khamzat is going to try and do. Just pick him up, submit him in the first round, move on to the belt. This is a number 1 contender fight, so it kind of leads me to believe that Izzy versus Dricus is going to happen, which I'm not mad about. But on to this fight. Yeah, so I think Whittaker is going to be able to weather that storm early on, and I think his movement, his footwork is going to be a bit too much for Khamzat. I don't really rate Khamzat too highly apart from the first round. You couldn't finish Gilbert Burns. You couldn't finish the 1 week's notice. Usman coming off 2 losses in a weight class he's never fought before. I don't see a world where you go over and pick up Robert Whittaker and slam him on the mat and finish him. I don't get it. I don't understand how that's the case. I honestly think Costa would have beaten Khamzat that night in Abu Dhabi, and I still think Costa does. The Costa fight with Whittaker was interesting because Rob didn't look necessarily good in the Costa fight, but, you know, he started to pick it up in the second and third. Apart from the first, like, it was a close first round. If Rob didn't need to get finished at the end, I probably would have gave it to him. But he nearly did. Like, Whittaker has been known to be chinny. But look at some of the performances he's put up against some of the best middleweights in the world. When he fought Vettori was top 5 in the world. You know, he fought Izzy for the belt maybe a year and a half before that. And Whittaker just dismantled him. I think Vettori was coming off a win against Costa as well, or I think he was. And Whittaker just dismantled him, make it look easy. He's beat Cannonier, made Cannonier look easy when he was climbing the ranks just before he got the title shot. And then he beat Till as well in a very close fight. These are all wins outside of when he lost to Izzy. And a lot of people thought he beat Izzy the second time. I'm not necessarily in that category. I do think Izzy won that fight, but there was a lot of people that thought Rob got robbed that night. Rob got robbed that night. You know what I mean? And for Khamzat, he hasn't really beat anyone good. Like, let's look at the names he's beat. Like, so he's beat Kevin Holland, Kevin Holland. And let's be honest here, Kevin Holland's never going to win anything in this sport. He beat Burns. It's a good win. But people are saying, oh, Khamzat, like, he's so good. But he couldn't finish Gilbert Burns. You know what I mean? That was a close fight as well. That was a very close fight. And the Usman fight, bro, he was getting outstruck by Usman. He looked gassed out in the first or the second round. After the first round, he looked terrible. And even his submission, like, offensive submission game against Usman was terrible. He had him 5 minutes of time and he couldn't finish him. Do you know what I mean? I know he nearly did a few times, but he didn't. And there's no good with the nearly part. You could say the same thing about Costa. Oh, well, Costa nearly finished Whittaker, but he didn't and ended up losing the fight. So nearly is never enough in this sport. But so Khamzat, it's a big test for him, man. It's a big test for him, but he's catching Whittaker at the right time because Whittaker is coming off probably his worst performance against Costa and then a really bad performance against Dricus. So if there was ever a time to be a Khamzat fan and want a good way to get to the belt through a big name, because let's be honest here, if he beats Whittaker, yeah, like, give him the belt. I don't really see a world where if you don't beat Robert Whittaker at middleweight, unless he goes on a mad loss streak, that you don't fight for the belt, because he's a bit like the Holloway of the division. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you beat him, you're for the belt next, and rightfully so, because Whittaker's been at the top for so long, and he's beat a lot of good people. Do I agree with this being a number one contenders fight? Middleweight's in a bit of a weird spot. There's no real number one contender. Izzy's coming off a loss, and he's probably going to fight for the belt now against Dricus. So they're stuck for people. Strickland, you know, maybe the winner fights Strickland, but then again, I think Strickland versus Cannonier is probably a possibility. The rematch, I wouldn't be mad at seeing that. That was years ago, and it was a very close decision. Usman's still in the mix as well. We don't really know what's happening with him. He kind of want to start thinking about what's going to happen next, if he's going to fight. I wouldn't mind seeing Strickland versus Usman again, because the first fight was at welterweight, and Strickland is not a welterweight. Certainly not anymore. So why not make that fight again? You know, why not make that fight? So that's what I think about this fight. It's going to be a very good one. It's going to be a very close one. But I'm going to go with Robert Whittaker. And I'm going to go Robert Whittaker 49-46. Unanimous decision across all the boards. And Khamzat's hype train derailed. Like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.